The word socialism is no longer a dirty word. But while the term is rising in popularity, the meaning is still lost on almost everyone. Most people think socialism is win no iPhone. I've heard people personally say it means no money and we revert back to trading goats for wheat. I've heard it means the janitor has to be paid the same as the brain surgeon. It will be a shock to these people when I tell you socialism is none of those things.
Oh no, this can't be. It says I'm 102%
socialist.
So why is it that when you ask 10 Americans what socialism is, you somehow get 11 different answers? Well, here's what I was taught socialism was in my schools. Oh wait, that's right. The word socialism was never muttered, not once, in any of the schools. I even took an economic class in college where they didn't even define capitalism. Now I did hear rumor of this grotesque, abhorrent, filthy word, communism. But all I was told about communism was that the Cold War proved capitalism was the perfect system because we won or something. Whatever this communist thing was, it never worked, and the Cold War was proof that capitalism, whatever it is, was better than communism and thus the best system that humanity has ever and will have ever designed.
A number of years ago, I heard a young father addressing a tremendous gathering in California. It was during the time of the Cold War. Communism and our own way of life were very much in people's minds, and he was speaking to that subject. And suddenly, though, I heard him saying, "I love my little girls more than anything," and I said to myself, "Oh no, don't say that." He went on, "I would rather see my little girls die now, still believing in God, than have them grow up under communism and one day die no longer believing in God."
I now know that equating the Cold War to capitalism versus communism is like saying World War II was a battle between the American hamburger and the German pretzel. Economic systems are not war. If anything, the Cold War just proved that capitalism has an incessant need for war to keep a system afloat. Why do our wars keep getting longer? Think about it. Korea was 3 years. Vietnam was 20. Afghanistan was also 20. Not to mention the other places that we're occupied in as a country right now. To understand what capitalism and socialism is, we must have a look at what Karl Marx actually observed. Here's what Marx observed. In every society, whether you're making food, clothes, or video games, the population is split in two. Those who work and those who don't. Not doing labor isn't inherently bad. In fact, it can be quite good. You don't want a baby doing labor because, well, it's a baby! Conversely, you don't want the elderly to work, not just because of inefficiency, but because you would like to uphold the promise that your elder years are the golden years where you may fully reap the rewards of a lifetime of work. Only a sicko would force Grandpa to keep working.
My wife died 7 years ago. Since then, I've been trying to reestablish myself.
And you're working here how many days a week?
I work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day.
And you do that because you have to, or?
Yeah, I don't have enough income.
There is another group that can work, but chooses not to. This is called foreshadowing. If the workers create the food and the non-workers eat the food, the workers must create a surplus. That just means they need to create more than they put in themselves. Marx then asked a simple question. Well, who controls that surplus? To answer that, let's look at how we've organized this surplus throughout history. Well, here's one economic system that I'm sure every American has at least heard of. It existed at the birth of this country, long before us, still today in this world, and arguably still in the American prison system. This economic system was called slavery.
He probably made up this whole slavery thing. What nigga you know gonna work all day in a hot field for no paper?
Immediately, you might already begin to understand how the producers and non-producers are arranged in this system. Of course, I'm talking about the slave and the master. Here's how it worked. The slave itself was a commodity. In America, they were literally treated as livestock. animals, hence the term cattle slavery. In this system, the master owned the slave, and thus, whatever the slave produced, usually a crop like cotton, the master would reap the full rewards of the slave's labor. In return, not that the master cared about anything other than their bottom line, he would take the resources, sell it off, then use the surplus to feed and house the slave. Usually scraps of food and cramped, inhumane housing. Just enough to keep the slave alive so they could do it all again the next day. With the rest of the money, he might invest in a preacher for the slaves to respect, and understand that their position as a slave is to respect the master, as clearly stated in the Bible, says the master. He might also take the money to buy more slaves and keep his machine going. A new portrait for himself. Who cares? It's his! Now here's another economic system that existed briefly in this country, before our revolution, and all across the world for centuries. It was called feudalism. Its relationship was that of a lord and a serf. Think kings and peasants. Here's the deal they had arranged. The king owned a portion of the land. Why did the king own this land? Who says other than the king? Well, God, of course. The king and his lineage has personally been ordained by the highest authority on this earth. If you have a problem with that, then take your army and try and take it. The winner, of course, is more favored by God, or his God has a bigger dick than your God. In order to live on the king's land, you must labor for the king. You may rent out a portion of the landlord's, lord's land, and pay him rent via your crops as a sort of tax. In return, you may keep a portion of your crops for yourself to do whatever it is you please. What a deal. Then, of course, we have the greatest system ever invented. Capitalism! You will, of course, see no similarities compared to the last two systems I described. They were barbaric, undemocratic. Obviously, a small minority of people shouldn't be able to control the wealth produced by the majority, right? Well, anyways, capitalism's relationship is defined by a small minority called employers, and a much larger majority called employees. I wonder which one you are. The employers of America today account for less than 3% of the population, and that's including the self-employed, who often don't have any employees themselves. This roughly 3%, the employers, the CEO, the owner, the board of directors, the US government. They're an employer too. They hire you, the employee. You trade your time, your knowledge, your muscles to labor for them, productively or non-productively. You can be a farmer or a manager. It doesn't particularly matter in this case. In return, the employer will give you a portion of what you produced back to you. With it, you can go home, buy food, go on a vacation, rub your balls. It doesn't particularly matter. Congratulations. You aren't a slave 24 hours a day. You don't owe money to your boss to live in your apartment. You could even be the king of your own home if you want.
King in the castle, king in the castle.
The boss doesn't care what you do outside of the 8 hours you work for he or she. But for those 8 hours, best believe you are a slave. A wage slave. Think about it. When is the last time you helped make a company-wide decision to lay you and your co-workers, who you've bonded with, off? When is the last time you decided to give yourself a raise because profits this year exceeded last year's? Who chooses your hours? Who chooses your work? Who chooses where your work is located and whether or not you have to physically be there or work remote? If it's you, congratulations! You might just be in the 3%. With the surplus value you have extracted from your employee, you may return a portion to them so that they can come back tomorrow. With the rest, you can buy the local politician so your taxes can be cut.
All right, Rick, let's talk about some of the donor aspects. And we're hearing from some big billionaires, one being Elon Musk, saying that he is pledging to donate at least $45 million per month to help garner some support and elect Trump in November.
You can invest in private education because these damn liberal schools are turning everyone into gay communists.
State Representative Tom Brinkman voted to expand Ohio's Ed Choice school voucher program. He's also among those who think Ohio's public schools receive more than enough money to cover any dollars lost when students in underperforming schools use vouchers to get a private education.
They act as if this is a big loss on their part. No, it's not.
Actually, it depends on where public students go to class. For example, a spokeswoman for Ohio's Department of Education tells me the state funds each student in Cincinnati's public schools to the tune of around $2,900. If a freshman at an underperforming high school like Western Hills gets an Ed Choice voucher valued at $6,000, that entire amount comes out of the CPS budget, which means the district loses more than double what was allotted by the state for that student.
You could even buy a dick rocket to go into space with your other rich buddies. How fun. But here's what socialism says. We already have the labor. So then why do we let an unaffected third party, who does no work, make the decisions? Socialism is simple. It adds one little thing. Democracy in the workplace. No masters, no kings, no CEOs. They don't do anything. Think about it. If Amazon was a worker cooperative, meaning it was run democratically, would people vote to lay themselves off so that Jeff Bezos can buy another super yacht, have a $50 million wedding, and buy yet another dick rocket? Or would they decide to not just keep everybody, but increase wages, increase time off, increase benefits for everyone? If you still believe Bezos provides some inherent, irreplaceable value that the company needs and that the worker should be grateful, then think about things in this way. If tomorrow, Jeff Bezos got Thanos snapped out of existence, but the workers remained intact, what would happen? Well, business as usual. Stock prices may drop in a panic, not that it affects the regular American anyways, but your package would still be delivered right on time. If instead all the workers vanished overnight, what would happen? Well, there would be no more Amazon. The people that actually do stuff wouldn't be there to do it. Jeff Bezos is replaceable. You aren't. I realized this at my last corporate job. The people at the bottom, who were paid the least, whether it was in a studio like mine with engineers and artists, or those on a factory floor, we at the bottom made no decisions. We and our direct bosses, who also worked, were the most knowledgeable. We had all the skill. Yet a manager created our schedules. Someone with no background in engineering, or math, or art, or game design, decided how long it should take us to build these games. Not just that. Their boss, the studio head, made final decisions on artistic choices. He could act to our workload if his gut insisted that something needed to be added or changed. His qualifications? Jack shit! Nothing! Nada! Once again, the manager's real job is to create a reason for themselves to have a job. Someone like a studio head's job is to make the CEO happy by maintaining the ship, doing the dirty work like layoffs, assuring people that what happened to the laid-off workers won't happen to them, right before he of course lays them off. I will debunk the specific myths of socialism in a companion video soon, but for now, understand this. Socialism isn't about the government owning your toothbrush. It's about you owning the value of your labor. Until then, remember, a better tomorrow is possible. Thanks for watching.